Hi everyone, welcome to Animal Science 200. I know you've been waiting for your first lecture, so this is my plan every week is to record the lecture for you. This chapter 1 is very short, um, and just remember to read the syllabus as far as details. The textbook I'm using is this one you can see right here, and it is a little bit older edition. I thought it'd be a little bit more economical. The data is maybe a little bit older, but the facts really haven't changed. So anyway, so the first chapter is kind of an ongoing theme in the whole book. It talks about animal contributions to human needs. So the first slide looks at domesticated animal species, their numbers and uses in the world. So as far as the information here that's valuable, there's a lot of information. But I just want to point out a few things. That ruminant animals are animals with a cloven hoof and a four-chambered stomach. We're going to learn a lot more about that. And these animals are typically grazing type animals. So that's what a ruminant is. And the animals in the ruminant category, of course, you can read are cattle, sheep, goats, buffalo, and camels. And then non-ruminants are animals that have a simple digestive system, monogastric, one single chambered stomach, kind of like you and I. Chickens are kind of what we call modified monogastric. Swine, turkeys, ducks, horses in the same boat. No cloven hoof there. They're not a ruminant. No four-chambered stomach. And donkeys and mules. So that's important terminology that you might want to add to your vocabulary. And so when we look at the most important ruminant species in the world in terms of numbers, it is cattle. Probably doesn't surprise a lot of you. What might surprise you is that the United States does not rank number one in cattle production. It's Brazil, then India, and then the United States. So that's kind of maybe an eye-opener for some of you. And then I thought it's interesting that second only to cattle are sheep, and in many countries, sheep are dual purpose, meaning they're used for milk as well as meat. And in the United States, we think of sheep mostly for wool and lamb production, not so much for milk. And the United States doesn't even rank in the top 5 countries in sheep production in the world. Same with for goats, buffalo, and camels. And if we go to non-ruminants, take a look at the most important non-ruminant animal, and that is chickens by and far. Of course, they're small, so you can fit a lot more chickens in a pen than you can cattle. So chickens, again, China outranks the United States in numbers. United States is second to China in just sheer numbers of poultry. I thought swine numbers are interesting, 967 million swine in the United States. China leading the world in swine production, the United States a distant second. And remember, of all the animals listed here, swine have more, religious and cultural, I want to say like prohibitions, like people don't want to consume swine because of religious beliefs. So that puts a little dent in the world numbers of swine production. Turkeys, the United States does lead in turkey production because of Thanksgiving, right? And I thought that was interesting that Chile is the second leading country. Who would have guessed that? And then ducks, the United States isn't even in the top. Horses, of course, we have a developed economy. We use horses for all kinds of activities, not really for farming anymore, but for racing, companionship, and sports. So that's horses. And then donkeys and mules, China leads. So I thought that was kind of interesting. Okay, so oops, I can see you're having a hard time there. Okay, I can see there. So animal agriculture is a global business. So when we look at animal agriculture in the big picture, we can see that the United States really is a small player in the world of animal agriculture. Only about 7% of the world's cattle, 9% of the world's chickens, 10% of the world's horses, but 35% of the world's turkeys. This chart looks at productivity gains And it's a little dated. That's where the new book might have been better, but that's okay. We're going to suffer through with this one. And for some of you, this will be very clear and understandable, especially if you've raised livestock in FFA or you have a farming operation at home. But for many of you who've never raised livestock, never been around animals, maybe these gains don't mean much to you. But to me, they're spectacular. And there are some very important reasons why productivity has increased. So with beef cattle, in 1925, the average beef animal that's being used for meat would weigh, at harvest time, would weigh 955 pounds. Today, the average beef animal weighs 1,280 pounds. And this would be at the same age, or actually probably younger. And it also has to do with, how processing plants have changed and how the economics of the meat industry have changed. Because it costs just as much to process a small beef animal like this one as it does for a larger one. So you have, the economics of scale, where you have a larger animal yields more product and therefore makes the packer and the producer more money. Sheep in 1925, average little Southdown lamb was 86 pounds. Today, the average lamb is, and that really hasn't changed too much. If anything, it's gotten a little bit heavier, is 141 pounds. So about the same age, maybe slightly younger, but again, it's a function of the processor. Dairy cattle, if we look at dairy cattle, the average milk marketed per breeding female in 1925 was about 4,189 pounds of milk. Remember, there's about 8 pounds per gallon of milk. So productivity has steadily increased. But if you want to remember an important fact, perhaps for the quiz, you want to remember that dairy cattle, by percentage gain, have increased productivity more than any other livestock species. So the average dairy cow produces 21,000 pounds. This is an average cow. Produces 21,000 pounds in her in 1 year. That is a huge amount of milk. Maybe for some of you that allows you to understand, some of you talk about a milk surplus. I don't know, during the COVID-19 thing, we saw milk dumping and things like that. But that was really a function of a very unusual economic situation. But anyway, so dairy cattle productivity has dramatically increased. And I do not want to hear that you don't drink milk, because a dairy animal produces milk, but the products that dairy products are in, goes beyond drinking a glass of milk. When you eat a bag of Doritos, you are consuming dairy products, okay? Read the label. When you are consuming Hershey's Kisses, you are consuming milk and dairy products, not to mention sour cream, ice cream, cottage cheese, all the cheese on your pizza. So, I hear so many times, oh, the younger generation isn't consuming very much milk. Well, they're consuming a lot of other products that have dairy in them. So that is important to remember. And then swine goes on, and that was probably the least increase in overall size. Chickens are pretty amazing. A broiler chicken is a meat chicken. 1955 or 1925, it was marketed at 2.8 pounds. Today, it's actually higher. It's about 6.5 pounds. But in 2012, it was 5.7 pounds. That's your live weight for a chicken. A lot of people, I always, I have to dissuade you. I have to tell you about animal science. And to get to this weight does not involve any hormones or antibiotics. Most chickens produced in the United States today are produced without antibiotics, and there are no hormones given to chickens. So, advertisers might have you think different, but that is a fact. So when we look at this dramatic increase in weight, it has to do with nutrition and animal husbandry. And that's why you're taking an animal science class, to learn about the science of animal production, not about what you read on YouTube, what you see on YouTube, or what you Google, or what you see on Facebook, because a lot of that is not based on science. Turkeys, the average turkey in 1925 was scrawny, only 13 pounds. The average turkey today is 29.5 pounds, but you've got to remember that the average turkey is consumed as lunch meat and further processed products, not as a whole-bodied turkey. And then laying hens productivity again dramatically increased. And it increased not because of hormones and antibiotics. It increased because of good genetics, excellent understanding of nutrition. The chicken genome has been mapped. We have, very good understanding of poultry production. So that is why productivity has increased. And I think that is a very interesting slide. Okay, so the next slide talks about the population involved in agriculture in different parts of the world. So this one, I think our population in the U.S. is closer to 330 million, but that's all right. So the U.S. is 316 million as of, I think this was 2012 or something. 316 million. And of that, 5 million are involved in agriculture, and about 1 million, or 1%, sorry, that's a percent, 1% of the population is actually producing all the food you consume. I think you need to remember that. So in the United States, 316 million people, about 5 million people are actively producing your food, which is about 1% of the population. So you put a lot of trust in those people producing your food. You might want to think about that. Let's go to a country that is one of the most populous countries in the world, China. In China, you have over 1 billion people. About 825 million are involved in agriculture, which is roughly 59% of the population. You say, why is it so high? Why is there only 1% in the U.S.? Well, look at agriculture in the United States. It is technologically advanced. Farms are modern, they're efficient. We use scientific methods to produce our food. In much of the developing world, you've got to remember, China has a long way to go in terms of technology to reach where the U.S. is. Everyone might have cell phones and they have large cities, but a huge proportion of the population is still living in rural areas and living in more of a subsistence type of a manner where you're growing food because that is the only thing that you can do. There are no other jobs. So that is an important number. And then if we go to Kenya, a small country with a small population, only 43 million, about 30 million of the people in the country are involved in agriculture, and that's about 70% of the population. And, you have to remember that food production in animal agriculture it's not easy. So keep that in mind. I have to hurry up. I'm talking too much. I only have 2 minutes to go before this slide's over, before this PowerPoint's over. So this one is interesting, and it's just a kind of an eye-opener that cereal grains make up about 50% of the world's caloric intake and about 45% of the protein. Animal products make up about 16% of the calories and 37% of the protein consumed. So grains are still a huge provider of calories for most of the world. So this slide just shows, young people like you checking out the meat counter, and basically it kind of reflects the idea that consumers are very interested in where their food comes from. Consumers want to know how their food is grown today. They want to know that it's safe, that animals were humanely treated, and that's a big change for my generation, which you just went to the grocery store and bought food. This slide is interesting because it shows the dark line shows total calories consumed. So the world is consuming more calories, even poor countries, which is the gray. And then this is the calories from animal products. You can see it's actually rather static. And developing countries, their calories from animal products. This slide says it all. The mechanization of agriculture has enabled a relatively small proportion of the human population to provide food for a growing world market. And last but not least, Shows some ruminants grazing, taking advantage of high quality forage in range-like conditions.